Why wouldn't a balanced budget amendment work as planned?
There are a number of different flaws with this approach to trying to rein in federal spending. For example, right now we have 28 states that have applied for an Article 5 convention for a balanced budget amendment, and they include an escape clause saying that Congress would be required to balance the budget except during times of national emergency. Now, when was the last time we had a national emergency? And the answer is, check your watch, it's right now, today's date, today's time. We're under multiple national emergencies simultaneously declared, and we have continually been under national emergencies since 1979. So looking forward, there's no likelihood that we're going to have a time when we're not under several national emergencies, giving Congress the excuse to not balance the budget. So on the one hand, there's no likelihood that it's going to balance the budget by passing this. But then there's also some dangers to it as well. That, for example, if we pass a balanced budget amendment saying Congress can spend money up to and including the amount of revenue, they are going to trim back their spending, or are they going to raise taxes to meet their current spending levels? More likely the second of the two. But in addition to that, depending on how it's worded, it's likely to give tacit approval to Congress spending money on anything they want to, whether it's enumerated powers or not, as long as it's within the revenue being brought in, as long as the budget balances.
So essentially, a BBA may actually force Congress to raise taxes on the American people then?
Yes, force Congress to raise taxes, and number two, give constitutional authorization for Congress to spend money on anything as long as it's within the budget. You just expanded the enumeration of powers to anything. You pretty much just disregarded all the enumeration of powers in there.
So when those who are crying the loudest that we need a BBA, if we had that BBA that they're talking about, and their taxes go up, they can't be crying at that point because they can't have their cake and eat it too, essentially.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Well, maybe their taxes can be raised and not us.
Just everyone that voted for it, please. Yeah, that's an interesting approach there. But the main thing here is it's not likely to balance the budget anyway. If we don't have an escape clause in there, such as during times of national emergency, would it be wise to say Congress has to balance the budget no matter what? Even during times of war, if we're fighting a war and we've run out of money, you just have to surrender, go down as a conquered nation protecting your balanced budget. Is that a wise strategy? Of course not. That's ridiculous. So we need to have these types of provisions where Congress can borrow money to execute a war in order to protect our nation if we need to.
Well, right now, for example, we're continuing in this war on terror against ISIS and other radical Islamic militants throughout the world. If the Congress proposes a budget that is balanced, but the sitting president, whether it's a Barack Obama, a Donald Trump, or someone else in the future, if they don't like that budget because it constrains their ability to spend on the projects that they, as the president, wish, they can declare a national emergency in the name of the war on terror, in the name of some other crisis, to then suspend that restriction, thus allowing Congress to give them that bloated budget that they want to have.
Right, and consider the fact that they're already doing this anyway. They're already declaring national emergencies all the time. We have, last I saw, about 30 simultaneous national emergencies. So I don't think there will be any need for them to declare a national emergency special just to be able to get past the balanced budget requirement. They already have several.
So essentially, even if they have this balanced budget amendment written out, ratified by the states, it would not even be, it couldn't even go into effect already because of all these emergencies that are already in place.
Correct.
So essentially, the BBA would already be nullified from the moment it's ratified if they follow the BBA as it's written with the escape clause
there. Yes, absolutely.
So all that time and money that would be put into having an Article 5 convention for the proposal of just getting this one BBA would all be essentially wasted.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing to consider on this is, just like in 1787, where there was the great compromise of the Constitutional Convention of 1787, there was the big states versus the small states arguing over how they wanted to be represented in Congress. In the same way today, I anticipate there will be a great compromise again, that the conservatives want the balanced budget amendment. And what would we have to give up in order to get liberals to go along with and ratify the balanced budget amendment? On a number of liberal blogs that I've been on lately, what they're all talking about is no matter what the convention is called for, you're not leaving the convention until we have an overturning of the Electoral College, and we need to also overturn the Citizens United Supreme Court ruling and make all political campaigns publicly funded through tax dollars, making government the gatekeeper.
Well,
on who
that'll
gets
help
to
to
run.
balance the budget, wouldn't it?
Really. And so this really comes down to, is it worth having this grand compromise of a balanced budget amendment which won't balance the budget,
Exactly.
and on the other hand then giving the liberal side overturning the Electoral College, overturning Citizens United? Is that a good deal for us?
Only, I suppose, only if you're a liberal, that would be a great deal.
Only if you want
because
to
you
do
know
those,
that the
yes.
BBA is not going to
Not gonna do
restrain
anything.
your big spending agenda anyway, because of all the national emergencies
Right.
that you already mentioned earlier.
All too often we see that when liberals and conservatives compromise, it's the conservatives that do all the compromising, and this is no exception. We're going to compromise by giving them those things in order to get a balanced budget amendment that doesn't balance the budget.
So if a balanced budget amendment won't work, how then can we balance the budget?
Well, you know, in today's political environment, you really can't. Take, for example, Governor Kasich, who's been traveling around the country promoting this idea of having an Article 5 convention for a balanced budget amendment. When he came to my home state of Montana, one of our state senators asked him, in order to help balance the budget, what have you done as a governor to reduce your state's reliance on federal funding? And his response really tells the tale for us here. He says, that's our money. How dare you imply that we would give up this? This is our money we're entitled to that's coming from the federal government. That is the problem. Today we have every state in the union receiving somewhere around 30 to 40% of their annual budget from federal funds, and they're not ready to relinquish that for a balanced budget amendment. In the same way, we have a majority of the American people receiving in one way or another benefits from the federal funding as well. Until we change the mindset of the states and the people about what the federal government's even for, so that they're willing to give up all this federal funding, how are we possibly going to balance the budget? It can't be done. There isn't the political will to do it. So getting back to your original question, how do we balance the budget? We have to get the people back to understanding the limits of power the federal government's supposed to be following. As I always say, we the people need to understand and demand adherence to the Constitution. And when we do that, it'll trim more than 80% out of the federal budget and give us a surplus annually of trillions of dollars. That's the only way to actually do it, is go back to the Constitution itself.
So when Governor Kasich was in Montana and he was asked what has he been doing to, reduce his state's reliance on federal funding, and you said that the governor said that was his money. So basically, Governor Kasich was, he's actually contributing to the problem he's actually crying about.
Sure. This is really what I refer to as, yes, they want to balance the budget, but they want it to be done on everyone else's backs, not their own. I don't want to be the one that takes the cut for balancing the budget, keep my programs going, but everyone else needs to sacrifice in order to save the budget.
That sounds very convenient and sounds very comfortable if you think you can balance the budget, but if my program doesn't get cut, as long as the budget is balanced, that's fine, yeah.
Right. Let's let everyone else do the hard cutting while we continue with our programs.